So, what if I told you that most of what we learn about one of the most important economists of the 20th century is basically wrong? Today, we're going to dig in and explore what John Maynard Keynes really said in his groundbreaking work, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. To really set the stage, you have to grasp the sheer scale of the earthquake Keynes caused. The economist Mark Blaug puts it perfectly here. He compares it to a full-blown scientific revolution. And we're not talking about some minor tweak to the old theories. No, this was a complete, fundamental shift in how we even think about the economy. And it was born from a very real crisis, both out in the world and inside the field of economics itself. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the revolution Keynes kicked off. Then we're going to tackle the simplified textbook version of his ideas, the one most of us learn. After that, we'll get to the good stuff, what he actually argued. And finally, we'll see why getting this right isn't just some academic debate. It really changes everything. Okay, let's dive right in. To understand Keynes, you have to understand the world he stepped into. It was a world completely dominated by what we call classical economics. It was a powerful, really elegant theory that, well, by the 1930s had one giant glaring problem. It had absolutely no way to explain the Great Depression. You see, the classical view was this beautiful, complete system. It was all built on this core belief that rational people operating in competitive markets would just sort of automatically guide the economy to full employment. The famous invisible hand was supposed to make sure that all our resources, including every person who wanted a job, were put to use. And yet, there was the 1930s staring everyone in the face. Millions of people, desperate for work, unable to find a job for years. This wasn't just a temporary hiccup. This was a complete and catastrophic system failure. The old wave thinking was in crisis, and classical theory just had no answers. So, this crisis opens the door for Keynes, but what happened next is fascinating. The version of his theory that ended up in most textbooks was a watered-down simplification. Some even call it the Keynesian counter-revolution because it took this radical theory and made it seem much, much tamer. The standard model you see in Econ 101, usually that ISLM graph, basically says that Keynes's world is just a special case of the classical one. It's a world where unemployment only happens because something gets stuck. And what's the main thing that gets stuck in this story? Yep, so-called sticky wages. Wages that just won't fall even when demand for workers does. But here's where it gets really strange, as the economist Axel Leijonhufvud points out. Think about it. The Great Depression wasn't a time of rigid wages. It was a time of catastrophic wage deflation. Wages were falling, and they were falling hard and fast. So to create a whole theory about that event that hinges on the idea that wages didn't fall enough, well, as he says, it's pretty curious. So if the textbook story about sticky wages is a distraction, what's the real story? To find that, we have to get to the absolute heart of what Keynes was trying to tell us. His revolution wasn't about rigidities. It was about the fundamental nature of information and uncertainty in a market economy. Now, to really grasp Keynes's big idea, we have to talk about this hidden character in classical economics, the Walrasian auctioneer. It's a fictional concept, of course. Imagine some all-knowing auctioneer who figures out the perfect price for everything, for cars, for bread, for labor, and shouts it out to everyone. Only after everyone agrees on these perfect prices does anyone actually buy or sell anything. It's a world of perfect, costless coordination. And here it is. This is the whole ball game. Keynes's fundamental break from the classicals was to say, that guy, the auctioneer, he doesn't exist. In the real world, there is no one to tell us the right prices. Information isn't perfect, and it certainly isn't free. We all have to make decisions and trade in a fog of real, profound uncertainty. This table just lays out the consequences so clearly. In that classical fantasy world, if demand drops, the auctioneer just calls out a new, lower price. Boom, problem solved. But in Keynes's world, in our world, when demand falls, a business owner doesn't know what the new price should be. They can't wait for an auctioneer to tell them, so what do? Their first immediate response is to cut production and, unfortunately, lay people off. The adjustment happens through quantities, output, and jobs, not through prices. Okay, once you get that one core idea, that there is no all-knowing auctioneer, it completely changes how you look at all of Keynes's most famous concepts. Suddenly, they're not about markets getting stuck, they're about how human beings try to cope with a future they can't possibly know. So let's start with money. In the classical view, money is just a convenience, right? A useful tool for buying and selling things, but it doesn't really change the real economy. But in a world without that auctioneer, in a world of uncertainty, does money become something more? Absolutely. And Keynes tells us why right here. Money is our link between the present, which we kind of know, and the future, which we absolutely don't. When you are truly uncertain about what's coming next, holding on to money isn't just about being able to buy stuff. It's a way to keep your options open. It's a defense mechanism against the unknown. And this insight just transforms everything. His idea of liquidity preference, that's our desire for safety and flexibility when the future is a black box, and the marginal efficiency of capital, that's the thing that drives investment. It's not some stable, rational calculation. No, it's a fragile, volatile expectation based on confidence, or what Keynes famously called our animal spirits, which can just vanish in a heartbeat. So we're at the final and maybe most important question. Why does any of this matter? Why is getting Keynes right more than just an exercise for economists? Well, because this deeper understanding reveals that our kind of economy has a built-in, inherent potential for instability. Because without that magical auctioneer to coordinate everything, a sudden shock to confidence, a shift in those animal spirits, can set off a devastating chain reaction. People get scared, so they dump their long-term assets and run to the safety of cash. This crashes the value of things like factories and machines, which brings investment to a screeching halt. Firms see demand disappearing, so they cut production and jobs, which causes demand to fall even further, and the whole system spirals downward. So the takeaway is huge. The root cause of a depression, in Keynes' real view, is not some simple friction like a sticky wage. It is a profound, fundamental failure of the system to coordinate all of our individual plans across time, all because we live in a world of deep, inescapable uncertainty. And this really leaves us with a final, bigger question to ponder. The story of Keynes and what was done to his ideas is a powerful lesson. It forces us to ask, are we really engaging with the deep, sometimes difficult ideas of the original thinkers? Or are we just settling for the simplified, more comfortable cartoons that have been handed down to us? Something worth thinking about.